All right. I think I see everyone. Mom, before I pass it over to you, I do want to just go over the technological side of things. I will do my best to spotlight people as they talk. I will do my best to mute people if they are not speaking. So just bear with me if there's any technological errors. Just text me in case I somehow lose connection. But cool, Mom, I will pass it over to you.
Okay. I was
Or would,
waiting for everyone to come in,
oh, okay.
but I was going to ask you to ask everyone their name.
We're getting there. We're gonna first, I'll just start and then I'll pass it over to you. So before we start with that stuff, I do want to go over just some information about the club. Mom will go over that, and then I'll go over the rules and expectations, just general stuff to make sure that it's a respectful and safe space to talk about things. First of all, as I mentioned, the meeting is being recorded. This is just like for posterity purposes, not anything crazy. If you're uncomfortable with that, reach out to Juliet, me, or Mark, and we can work to make sure that you're not recorded, But anyways, to go over the rules of the club, these I mainly came up with my mom's assistance. So first of all, please be respectful of others' opinions and the things that they are saying. The beauty of this group, not everyone that is going to be in these clubs every week is able to be here today, but we will be having people from all around the world of all different ethnicities, genders, sexual identities, things like that. And I know especially that there's a lot of people from different places. We all have different norms and standards that we expect. But because we are also diverse, we want to embrace diversity, accept diversity, and just be proud of diversity. And on that note, the space is LGBTQ plus friendly and inclusive of all peoples. And if you say anything that is hateful, sexist, racist, or anti-Semitic or anti-LGBTQ plus, I will either remove you from the Zoom or we will ask you to leave the house. I understand we all have our own opinions and our thoughts, but this is not a space to be spreading hate. We do not tolerate hate. I do not tolerate hate, especially. This is something that should be a standard in everyone's lives. And if it's not, that is something I highly encourage you to think about in your everyday life. But in this space, we will be respectful of everyone, or we will ask you to leave politely. Me and Mark are going to be moderating today and every month. So if we have Intertalk Radio, interesting. So if we'll do our best to moderate. If something happens, just bear with us again. Technology is frustrating, and we are doing our best to make sure this is a great experience for everyone. Next, if you are presenting for a week, guest speakers, you are welcome to bring in, but you must run these ahead of time through Alicia. But we love the idea of having guest speakers. If you know of like anyone that's like an intellectual or, maybe like knows the topic really well, we would love for you to bring them in. During the conversations, during the discussion portion of the evening, we ask that you try not to monopolize conversation. We love that we have a really big group. There's a lot of people in my mother's home. There's a lot of people on Zoom. There's more people coming. So yeah, just try to keep your speaking brief. Of course, we want to hear what you have to say, but if you find yourself talking over people, I talk a lot, as you'll learn. So I will be mindful of this. Also, try to be attentive and don't interrupt other people as they're speaking. The only people that are allowed to do this are the moderators, which is what I'm really excited to do, interrupt people. But at the end of the day, the goal of this is to have fun, to learn, to get to know each other, and to just create really fun, fruitful conversations that we might not have otherwise, which we will get into now. Mom, do you want to talk about the club? Do you want me to talk about this? What would you prefer? Gets her glasses on.
I'll just say that, am I on?
You're on.
Okay, just quickly and then you can go. But I've been thinking about this a long time, like since I'm a philosophy and English literature major, which means I can have really good parties. So, but I've always wanted to have a philosophical club or an intellectual discourse club. And I tried in one of my philosophy classes 2 times, and both times my professor was the only one that showed up. And he's like, I could have told you this, no one wants to do this. So I was really shocked that everyone I talked to about it, almost everyone was like, yes, that sounds fabulous, I would love to join. And I like to say shine on a lot. I say that in letters and things. And so we were thinking of Salon, like in the 1800s. Kelly came up with that idea. And then I like to say shine on. So Bill said, let's call it the Shine On Salon. So there you go. That's how it came about. And I'm hoping we can all shine, learn, and share ideas. And trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, the recording. Some people, some of my friends in California said it might be kind of cool if we get a YouTube channel, if I can get a game with it. Eventually, if this goes well, and then have it out there, because like I know a lot of people couldn't come tonight and want to see the recording, which is one of the reasons we thought it might be fun to record. But like Juliet said, you can just put a flower over your face or something. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say about that. Thought-provoking discussion. So yeah, go ahead, Jen.
Perfect. Thank you. Now the boring logistical side of things. So we'll hopefully be meeting about once a month. I think the next date that we have gone ahead and set is, I believe, January 14th or 15th. I can't remember. And
Wait,
yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say the reason we're going to switch it to Saturday is because we have people in England, Switzerland, Egypt, and maybe Denmark that might want to join, and they're all like the hours are so messed up. So I'm trying to figure out a time. I don't know how willing you guys would be to start eating and drinking at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. But that's
Absolutely.
I don't know.
That's gonna be my
I guess I can wait.
Sorry, that you have.
I'll tune in for that. He does that all the time.
Anyways, yes, that is going to be great. We'll move to Saturdays, or West Coasters will be doing this at like 1 and drinking as we go, of course. But yeah, so just today I sent things out this morning, which was a little late. That's my bad. Blame finals. But in the future, I'll try to send out the Zoom link and the resources that you can like kind of ponder if you wish, like a few days before, if not a week before, probably more like a few days knowing me. And then the other really important thing, I'm going to go to the next slide. I made this tiny URL, which will just directly link you to our Google Drive folder, which I will just actually, I have it pulled up, so we can do that. Sorry. So it'll look like this. And then there's this wonderful schedule, which, oops, there we go. If you go to, you can see the schedule, and you can like go ahead and sign up for a month if you want. As you can see, me and Sophia will be doing next month. Dr. Slayton will be doing the following month. Hermeet is doing April. So if you have ideas of what you want to present, you can just go ahead and sign up. We would love to hear from you. We also have like the roster here. That sounds so formal. It is not a class. This is just for mainly my purposes. So if you have people you want to invite, just add them to the list, and I will include them in the emails that I send out every month. And then this also, if you have like topics or ideas of what you want to talk about, you can put them here. And then I may end up going through if like 2 people want to talk about some sort of political thing. I might switch them to have like 1 month and then a different topic. You know, I'll let y'all know. But yeah, we really want to hear from everybody. And you can put your preferred month of when you'd like to present. So yeah, that's just like the fun little, I guess not fun side of it. But we really want to hear from everyone. The goal of this club is not to be pedantic. It's not to be frustrating or like make people annoyed. It's to really have an opportunity to learn, have an opportunity to talk about different things. And then, yeah, if you are presenting, I really highly encourage you to look for like scholarly articles specifically, because, you know, it just elevates the knowledge you're bringing to the table. Of course, this is not required, but it is great to have different sources. As someone who writes for a political magazine, you know, getting good sources is one of the most vital things to presenting anything. And then as I did for this, or my mom did for this one, you can just make a little folder with the date and the topic. And then that way people can go look at that. And like, if they're interested in the topic after or beforehand, they can read the articles you're discussing. I would encourage you to prepare a very short presentation. You'll see my mother's in a minute, which is really beautiful. She did a great job. And this can be like pictures, this can include words, it can be really whatever you want. You can make a video, I don't know. And then that way you just have some visuals to present while you're discussing. And then of course, at the end of your little presentation, that's when the floor opens and everyone gets to talk about whatever we're learning about. And yeah, and then if you'll just email the folders and information to me like at least 3 days in advance so I can share it with the rest of everybody and set the Zoom link. All right. Can everyone see my screen and can everyone see, let me spotlight Alicia. Is that good for everyone?
Yes.
Cool. Alicia, take it over.
Hey, more people might be joining via Zoom, by the way. I know Hermite's going to join like from India or something. So okay. Thank you guys for coming. I'm so excited. So we talked about Picasso, Pablo Picasso. I have a lot of artists that I love, and he's one of them. At least I thought I loved him. Anyway, it seems like the more I learn about artists, the less I like them. That's all right. Yeah, as you know, he's considered one of the best artists in the world, modern artist. He's even considered by some circles the father of modern art with his cubism and his painting and his sculpting. And the thing that I found out is that actually I wrote a poem to my interpretation of a painting of his, and I was just sort of going out there like making it dark and crazy and just trying to say voyeurism, like we don't know about the models, we don't know about the women at all, because whenever you're in an art gallery, which every time I travel I go spend like the whole day in the gallery, you never hear about the model, frankly, nor do you hear about the negative parts of the artist, which I think is also kind of interesting. But so I wrote this poem and I was trying to figure out how I was going to connect it, and then found all these journal articles about how horrible of a person he is. And my poem is like spot on. How did that happen? Which was disappointing because I like Picasso, but nonetheless, this is, you know, like I can still appreciate his art, but now I know more about him. And so that's what I'm discussing tonight. Okay. So
Oh, before you start, Mom, would you mind just giving a brief introduction to your background with art a little bit and like why, you know, that side of things?
Oh, well, I love painting and drawing, and I've done paintings, and I wanted to be an artist for the longest time. Had a couple showings and kind of sucked at it, so I moved on. But I still love it, and like legit, every time I travel anywhere, any city in the world, I always go spend like hours in the gallery. Probably my kids didn't like that as much.
No.
Yeah, that's basically it. I love art. I love art. And I have a lot of artists that I love. And the other thing is like with Picasso, you know, I knew enough about him with all the stuff I went and saw and learned about him. And I have books on him. I have a friggin' copy of one of my paintings of his that I love. But like another one is Edvard Munch, you know, and you know him because he was schizophrenic, you know, and I love the fact that some of these artists are just crazy. You know, that just makes it more interesting.
Oh.
But I never thought about them being, you know, bad people. So anyway, here we go. I can't wait. I know. So Picasso had a lot of lovers, wives and lovers, hundreds. No one really knows how many lovers. Like he loved women, but not in a good way. He kind of used them as muses, but also as, you know, to encourage muse for his art, obviously for his paintings, but then mostly he would get tired of them for whatever reason and discard them or just get more lovers. You know, he was just quite the womanizer and frankly mean a lot of times. So I'm going to give you a brief rundown of him and his women. Okay. So he was born in 1881 in Malaga. I'm maybe mispronouncing these things and I'm so sorry, but I'm going to try. Spain. And his father, Don Jose Ruiz, an artist and art teacher himself, while he was growing up, they would go to mass on Sundays, and after mass, he would take him to the brothel.
Oh.
Church brothel. Yeah, you know, so there we go.
Father-son bonding.
I mean, right? So by the time he was 13 or 14, it's not exactly known, but probably 13, he lost his virginity in a brothel with his dad. Nice. So
Joining rooms or same name?
Normal for the
he
time.
did show artistic genius at an early age, and he went to an art school in Madrid, Spain. And then in 1900, he was in Paris at age 19, and he traveled with his friend and companion, Germaine, and I'm not positive, I'm sorry again, Germaine, I think. Like his best friend, he goes to Paris with. So his best friend, Germaine, falls in love with this girl, like totally madly in love, but he can't perform. Don't know why, it's not said why. So Picasso just goes in there and says, well, he seduces the girl, the love of his life, and has sex with her, and Germain shoots himself.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah, this is how the story starts. Yeah, brothel, best friend. Yeah. So this begins Picasso's blue period. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but this is when he goes in his depressive period, which I always felt so bad thinking, oh, it was his friend who died, not knowing the whole story. Because you know, when you read the things on the you know,
Right.
they don't say
They don't
well, it's
say
'cause he-
that.
yeah. So he decides he's going to paint these paintings, which is one I'm going to talk about later. The blue and black basically is all he used in his paintings. And it was to show respect, so to speak, for his friend and be whatever. You're getting the idea of Picasso, right? So this is tragic, whatever. 1900 and 1903, he moves between Paris and Madrid, and he becomes obsessed with this stripper. And he does a ton of new drawings on her. And this is really not very relevant, but yet it is because he's so obsessed with women and it's all about women in paintings. You know what I'm saying? Like what he
I
does.
know exactly what you're saying.
But they were never displayed, which is another interesting thing, and I could not find out why. So then in 1904, he settles down to Paris and gets a studio, and he meets Fernande. Oh my God, I'm messing this name up. Fernande Olivier. She's an artist model, and she has red hair, gorgeous brown, deep eyes. I've seen pictures of her. She's gorgeous. And he is like obsessed with her. He's obsessed with her. So he pursues her, of course, and she moves into a studio, and this begins the end of the blue period and starts the rose period. How funny is this, you guys, right? So he starts the rose period where he makes multiple periods of basically of her body. Okay. So later he refers to this time with her in his studio as the only place he's ever happy, which I think is interesting. As the story progresses, you'll see why, because I don't think anyone ever makes him happy. 1909, he upgrades his studio, and this woman, Fernande, how do you pronounce it? She gets really weary of his possessiveness, and she leaves him. So what does he do to make himself feel better? He goes after her best friend, Marcel Hubert. So he calls her Eva, and he pursues her, and she goes with him, and they start having an affair, and he's really into her. However, he continues with a bunch of other women at the same time. It's never really said in all of these articles that I read how many women he had at one time, but at one point I know at least 4 at one time. At least 4 at one time. Think about that. Anyway.
Man, right now.
So this Eva girl that he's enjoying with other women, she gets tuberculosis. So he gets another woman, yet another woman named Gabby, and kind of, blows her off. And then in 1911, Eva dies. So he takes more lovers on to make him feel better. This is just so amazing, you guys. It just blew my mind when I was reading this. So then he falls in love with a Russian ballerina girl, Olga Koklova. He loved her body, and she was really kind of disinterested in him. So what did he want? He wanted her that much more. Not only did he want her, he wanted to possess her. So eventually she gave in, and she became his mistress. And then in 1918, his wife, and she had a son, and he had some paintings of his son and all that, blah, blah, blah. He continues his but he continues with all these other mistresses while he's with her. I mean, are you getting the gist of this here? Now, the interesting thing about this is Olga starts having mental illness. She gets really depressed, and it really affects her because he keeps having all these affairs and she just can't handle it. She's on the brink of a nervous breakdown. She eventually does. At this point, he starts doing a lot more cubism, and the interesting thing is, one of the Annabelle paintings says that his paintings become grotesque, distorted-looking women. Now, I understand the appreciation of cubism and how modern and different and unique and all of that, but if you really start looking at it, which I did, some of his paintings, they do look grotesque, and they do look, when you compare them to some of the other paintings with other women that he was with, like he has this distinct love-hate relationship with him, and it's really evident. Anyways, that's freaking fascinating. 1927, he gets Marie Teresa Walter. I'm just moving on because there's so many women. She's 17 years old and he's 46.
Wow.
They meet on a Paris street. She's not very smart, submissive. She has his illegitimate child. I think he had many illegitimate children, by the way. Probably the closest love beside his second wife, yet he kept her in secrecy because she wasn't very smart, so he didn't want anyone to know about her. I mean, what kind of guy is this, right? I love you, but I don't want you to go out with me. So, and she described his lovemaking as, quote, intimidating and terrible.
Ugh.
I won't even, yeah. And then Olga, the other one, finally couldn't take it anymore, and she moves to south of France. That's his wife, remember? Like, he does have still, it's so confusing. And then she still gets he still has a mistress, Marie Teresa, has a baby, another illegitimate baby. And Dora Maar, another mistress at the same time, smart, stunning, 29, he's 46. Okay, this is where it gets really funny, guys. So he's trying to keep the two mistresses apart, right? So one day they run into each other in the studio, and I cut this out, this was so good. This is him talking. Marie Therese turned to me and said, make up your mind, which one of us goes? I was satisfied with things as they were. I told them they'd have to fight it out for themselves. So they began to wrestle. It's one of my choicest memories. So then he does a painting. As I said, I haven't mentioned this, but there's many paintings that go along with all these women. It's called Birds in a Cage. Okay, so the black dove is Dora, and
Oh, God.
fighting with a beautiful white dove who is Marie Therese.
Wow.
That's their, yeah, he did a painting. Oh, there's many paintings in all of this that I didn't show, but oh my God. Anyway.
And then he went on to write for sitcoms.
So in 1943, it continues. He gets two girls in the cafe, invites them to the studio, has sex with them, and then one of them, 21-year-old Francoise Gillot, law student and painter, he pursued her for months till she caved. So going on, now this is toward the end. Dora, the one before, she hears and suffers total mental breakdown. So he sends her to a mental institution. Says hi, and then he moves Francoise, whatever, in with him. And Olga, the other one, was mentally unstable. She's the one that left him because she couldn't handle all of his infidelities. So, but she's near where he's living now. So she keeps going, bursting into their home and attacking Francoise. Like she just bursts in and starts beating them.
Olga.
Why not, right?
Olga,
Yes.
mentally insane. He has another mistress, 1951, Genevieve, I love that name, Laporte. He's 70, she's 24.
Oh,
70 and 24.
Oh,
she's like,
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I mean, she's a poet, but she ends up leaving him in 1953. Again, one of the only ones of all these women. 1954, his wife Olga dies. And then he has a model, Jacqueline Rogue, an exotic 27-year-old. And it's his second wife. And remember all these other women that come and go, all these mistresses at the same time as the first wife, now second wife. He marries her in 1961, and they're married for 20 years. Now,
Wow.
albeit, that's great, but he still has tons of mistresses during that time. But she calls him, I kid you not, her god. She worships him. She kisses his hand and his feet like it's weird.
no,
It's so weird.
no.
So he does a lot of paintings of her, and then, okay, this is where it's funny, it's kind of funny. In 1966 to 85, he has prostate problems. So all these women, he can't perform anymore. How ironic is that? Okay, and then Marie Teresa, maybe his greatest love, hung herself. Oh wait, no, sorry. 1973, he dies at 92. He lives to 92. Jacqueline is at his side. Marie Teresa, the one before, hung herself 4 years later. Jacqueline, the other lady, started drinking in 1986 and then shot herself because she couldn't be her god anymore. some of his family members killed themselves. The one thing I want to leave you with, there's so much more to say before I go to my poem, but one of the things he said is that all of his women are either goddesses or doormats. And basically what he did is he thought of them, at least some of them, as goddesses until he was tired of them, or they were ill, or they bored him, or they were whatever, and then they were doormats. And then but the more I read, I don't have specific details, but it did sound like he was abusive, and he was just, in fact, one person said he might have been, just not schizophrenic. What does it mean? One way or the other?
Bipolar.
Yeah, stuff like that. Okay, so the Blue Nude is the painting that I focused on because I saw it at MoMA in New York years ago, and it always just stuck with me, and I thought it was just stunning. And I tried to put the date. Well, it doesn't matter. It was one of his mistresses in the beginning, and so I wrote this poem. Again, you guys understanding that I wrote this poem before I knew all of that, which I think is just so crazy. Okay. Blue Nude by Pablo Picasso, an interpretation. Can you guys just move? Okay.
Wait, hang on.
What? What's wrong?
You're gonna zoom.
Go ahead. Oh, no, I'm good.
You're
I
gonna
just
zoom,
not gonna use that restroom because.
you're gonna zoom in?
Yeah.
Okay. Ready? Blue Nude by Pablo Picasso, an interpretation. Outlined in black coal like a raven, arc spine, knees poised, onyx tresses fall just beyond his shoulders, buried face, hidden soul. Blended in blues of a butterfly, its broken wings damp with morning dew, vibrant yet damaged, in the bluest of hues. Immersed in sapphire echoes of time, exposed and alone, unseen scars that shine black and blue, light flames of fire. Covered in ash from burning embers of anguish, cascading into nothingness, worthlessness, trash. Absent red, yellow, green, like a fallen leaf, crisp, wilted, so easily crushed between his fingers unseen. Showered in shards of invisible glass, piercing her skin with a million clean cuts. Bleeding blue, deep blue rain, and lightning flash. She, this Blue Nude, beckons with radiant skin, sensual back, absent eyes. We watch wantonly, expectantly, hoping she'll lift her beautiful face, but alas, she does not. The Blue Nude, too soon forgotten anguish, our disquiet no more. Yet, as we turn to leave, she stares back at us, and once again we want her. The Blue Nude.
Cheers.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Time of the clock.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't talk too long. I have no idea how long I was talking.
Someone Zoom?
Yeah, that was like perfect.
Did you get it out? Did you get it out?
Yeah. Julia?
That was beautiful. Thank you. Do you want us to turn to discussion now? How do you want to present? Do you have like questions you want to pose or anything like that?
No, I just wanted to share really, and I mean that's what this is all about, sharing and learning. And
I have a question.
Yeah.
Like, legal discussion. So you chose the topic based on the painting. You're excited about it. you do the research, come to this, say, different conclusion
Yes,
right,
yes,
about the artist.
yes.
So how did that affect your appreciation for the art itself once you knew more about the artist? Because I think this happens a lot nowadays, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a big
Yeah.
fan of a band or something,
Yeah.
and then you hear them speak their politics, whatever, and people can be like, "No, I don't like that person anymore."
You never meet your heroes.
You never meet your heroes.
I mean, yeah, this is all very recent. Like when I wrote the poem, I honestly was just reaching for some dark place that didn't really have anything to do with Picasso. I was just trying to say we're lawyers, you know, we don't know anything about the models and all that. And the more I found out, the more I was just kind of shocked. Like one article I read was by his granddaughter who describes him even. I only talked about the women. I didn't talk about how he treated his family. Oh my God, like horrible. So yeah, like I have a coffee cup in there that I got at the Tate Museum in London, and it's the one of his, the woman looking in the mirror, and that's my favorite painting of his. But I gotta be honest with you, like now that I know all of this, I just get rid of the coffee cup because now I can't look at his paintings without knowing what I know.
Yeah, but take another look and
Well, no, I
appreciate something different. Maybe.
do appreciate. Don't get me wrong. I just don't know if I want the coffee.
It's a coffee taster.
I don't know if I want. I don't know if I want the representation of his art necessarily in my life right there, like in my kitchen when I'm doing coffee. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I still appreciate it. So will I go to another exhibit of his? Maybe not. I'm sorry, that's true though. I can't see him the same way anymore now. I
You have
do
to go with
appreciate
that.
his art, but now every time I see like most of his paintings are of women. And now I know, like I've researched it enough to know a lot of what they are. Like
It was a tool.
he used them for his creativity, which is fine, all artists do, but I don't know. In answer to your question, yes, this is completely differently now. I'm kind of mad.
Yeah.
Well, almost makes you want to re-examine, every artist,
Yeah, no,
musician,
but
or whatever.
I
that
know, I don't know
you
if I
like.
do now.
And if you do that, you might find not a life to like.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I still appreciate his paintings, though. Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong. I just don't know if I want his coffee cup. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
understand, totally, yeah.
Actually, I think what Chris said, actually there is something to that, right? Where if you go and, I would still want to go see his paintings, right? And there's part of that, you have a limited opportunity to see some of these things,
Yeah.
right? So you're traveling, you want to go and there's a Picasso
It's history.
exhibit. I do want to go see that, but it's actually, I think, now it actually there's something else to take to that now, where you're like, okay, whereas before I might have seen the Blue Nude and been like, well, that's a fascinating, picture, and maybe or maybe not I would have thought about the model. Every painting now I'll think about the models, and that's actually good now. Every time I see his work,
Yeah.
I'll think, oh, actually, there's something behind that
deeper.
that I
It's
hadn't
deeper.
thought of before.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
a benefit in this kind of thing.
yeah, absolutely.
His more recent work, he was making fun of himself mostly. Paris,
Yeah.
The airport and the whole thing. He was doing stick figures. He was doing the dove thing, and the whole trip with him painting self-portrait of a monkey.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was making fun of art so all through all of his different periods, he was expressing himself as he was going along. So you can appreciate that. He wasn't lying when he painted that
No.
picture.
Yeah.
That woman was buckled down and he was no matter how you see him,
No, I
everybody else had they could decide whether they wanted to be here or not.
No, I totally agree with you. I
Yeah,
totally
yeah.
agree with you. And I can appreciate, I still appreciate it.
that was his thing. He was expressing himself.
Yeah.
I don't have. He's like every other artist,
That's
No,
good.
seriously.
I
And just
agree.
like you're expressing yourself. Paint
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
figure that out, right?
No,
Yeah.
I agree, and that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate his painting.
Yeah.
I just don't know if I want his copy.
Right.
Right, no,
Perhaps
but that's
I'll-
okay.
And that's
too.
okay, right?
Yeah, that's all okay. Yeah.
I want to make sure that we hear people from the Zoom group as well. Does anybody on the Zoom have points to add? I also can pose some questions. I just want to make sure everyone's heard.
I can say, oh God. Is it fixed now? Okay. Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I think in general, this kind of just brings up like so many questions about what place morality has in art and self-expression, because it's, you know, like you guys were just talking about at the Lovell household, it's someone's choice whether or not they want to view the art, whether or not they want to study it, whether or not they want to analyze it. But at the same time, it's kind of like, what does it mean to appreciate art when you know things about the motivations behind it, about the person behind it? And especially like now, like when we have so much access to information about these people, like it's just completely, I feel like it's just a completely different experience to listen to music, to go to galleries and look at art, to look at sculptures, especially with just the difference between how women were viewed when Picasso was painting and how they are now. I don't really know how much is really different, but in terms of just what's accepted now versus then, what does it mean to think about the fact that Picasso, why did I just say it like that? Picasso appreciated these women for the sake of his art, but so much of it was appreciating the body. And I really don't know how you escape, which I had no idea, Alicia, about the whole brothel and like being essentially raised going to brothels, that undoubtedly, irrevocably changes or shapes how you view women. And I think that it's clear that that's apparent in his art. I honestly think that any male artist that focuses on the female figure as the primary motivation for his art, there's a lot to be questioned there about their motivations behind it, because you can see something as beautiful and have absolutely zero respect for them. So in general, I just think it's interesting to think about morality when looking at art, what place it has there. It's really individual, and also just kind of bringing it into like a modern day focus of like, what's our responsibilities when it comes to that? Like, should we stop listening to artists? Should we stop listening to musicians? Should we stop like appreciating the art of certain artists? You know, I don't know. So.
Thank you so much, Sophia. Oh my God. Sorry, I hit a button. Yes, David, please.
Here's a good question. In turn of the century 1900s, being an artist, did that give you an excuse to not have morals? Or nowadays, in our time, in the 2000s, is being an artist require you to have morals?
Very good question. And for everyone, just to set the tone, if you don't mind in person and on Zoom, just raise your hand, just like David just did, and that way we don't interrupt others and things like that. Yes, Stephanie, please.
I have kind of what I feel is maybe an orthodox response to this. I feel like we ask our artists to deliver great literature, great masterpieces. And then we also ask them to, hey, honey, wake up at 8 a.m. It's time to create. And that's just not the life that you live as an artist. You live, you create from maybe crazy sex and maybe having the need for maybe more than one partner. Maybe don't get married and go to church on Sunday. I just think that we cannot ask for great art and ask people to create from a place of morality that maybe the rest of us live in. I don't think it's fair for us to do that. And to say he's 60 and she's 20. Well, I have a crush on someone who's maybe 20 right now. And so, I mean, I want to live my life from a place of passion. From that place of passion, I want to write, I want to dance, I want to plant flowers, and I want to create. And I am sick of boundaries being put on me because of my genius, because of my artistic ability, because of my desire to do this. I want it all channeled through me. And I want to give people permission to do what they want to do. That means behaving badly. I do not give permission for that. What that person did, Will, whatever, Smith, when he slapped somebody up, I think that's bad behavior. I'll personally choose not to watch his movies for now. Maybe at some point I may, but for now, that's my choice. But maybe, is that his way of artistic expression? I don't know. You know, maybe put your cup on the top shelf for a while and not use it. But I do think that there is a mode that we cannot confine people and then beg them to create.
Well said.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I actually would like to respond to that as well, if that's okay. And then Alicia, I will call on you. I think one thing that this brings up is sort of the role of the viewer. And like it comes into like the ideal of like voyeurism and sort of the importance of creating the context. And especially like in my studies with anthropology and stuff, I think the most important thing you learn is participant observation, and also like acknowledging sources and acknowledging the context of the creation that you are viewing. And art is one of the most interesting forms in the sense that it is the most personal form of creation, and in my opinion, especially, sorry, Dr. Slayton, in my opinion, especially in like, you know, whether it's poetry or physical art or dancing or painting, whatever it is, it's an expression of what you're feeling internally to some extent. And I think, especially with, you know, especially in the modern age, we are a lot more aware of the problems of the past and the issues with, you know, sexism and racism and all of these different isms that are super important in the modern day and are super important to be aware of and to acknowledge. And that's sort of on us to do the research. It's not, I mean, Picasso's dead, you know, I mean, he did his thing, he made his art, he did it. He probably made a lot of money off of it, I'm sure, but he's dead. But the reason why it's important to have these discussions and to have the awareness that, okay, he created these beautiful pieces of art, but he was also not a good person. And he was bad to women. And I mean, it's almost like, to me, when you were saying all that stuff, I was like, it sounds like a cult, like a weird cult with this, like Picasso's almost like a weird cult leader with all these women who are obsessed with him and killing themselves, and, you know, so tied to almost his pleasure in a way that's really odd and scary and alarming. And but I think the point of viewing art is to not only to appreciate the art for the art, but also to be aware of the art in its context. And I think, like, especially in museums and like museum studies, I think that's on the role of the curator, and that's on the role of the people viewing it. I mean, I've worked in museums and I've seen exhibits that I'm like, that could be done better. I mean, that's like, these are pieces that are culturally, there's a cultural context, there's a historical context, there's so much context that we need to be aware of to fully appreciate the art and its creation. And I think Picasso is just a very specific circumstance that, like, it's okay to enjoy the art, but it's also only okay to enjoy the art if you know the whole picture. And my first thought, I think, when we were discussing these things is like Kanye currently, and how he's having all these anti-Semitic remarks when he's done a lot of really, really bad things and said a lot of really horrible things in the past. And it's interesting to me that, like, it's only until now that people are finally like, okay, we're done with Kanye. Like, he's saying things that he shouldn't say and we're done. When to me, I'm like, I've been done with Kanye since he started saying like racist remarks 10 years ago. I don't know, that was an over-exaggeration, you know, like 2 years ago, whatever. So it's these interesting thoughts that it's like, where do we draw the line? Like, when is it that it's not acceptable? And like Stephanie, how you brought up Will Smith, like, when is it, like, why is it that Will Smith slapped some person? Okay. But then you have Kanye over here saying anti-Semitic things and racist things, and where do we draw the line? Like, when is it okay to view art? When is it not okay to view art? I guess to me, I draw the line, like, if they're dead, what profit are they making? Okay. Like, sucks, they're dead. Okay, I hope they died a painful death. I hope they're in hell, if you believe it. I don't know.
Wow.
I don't believe in hell, so I'm allowed to say that. Anyways, Alicia, I want to call on you. I'm gonna shut up.
I'm just gonna be really quick. I was just gonna say that I completely 100% agree with you. The only thing that bothers me is not that he had all this sex with all these women and the mistresses. I mean, you know, whatever. It's that the more I read about it, he was actually cruel to them. You know, and he was very he was cruel.
Yeah.
And he hurt them, like he made them freaking kill themselves and shit.
Don't dig Picasso.
But that's the only reason. It wasn't the amount of women. I think that's very funny. But that's not what bothers me. What bothers me is how he's so cool.
Of course.
I agree, that there's no excuse for.
But in answer to you, Juliet, I don't know. Like, I agree. You think about people today and hell, even everything, sports, politicians, anything we pay for to go see. Like, do we consider the morality or not? Boom.
I don't know, there's a big
Thank you
difference
so
between Will
much.
Smith
I do see a hand. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name.
That's okay. I'm Kelly, and you're making gestures and characteristics just like your mother, which is cracking me up. So, Alicia, I have a question for you because I didn't do a bunch of background on when did he start making money? Like, was he immediately famous? Was he immediately making money, or was it later in life? And at one point you said in the 1960s, he was with her for 20 years, which would have been the 80s, but then he died in the 70s. So I got a little confused with that. I'm just asking you sort of history.
Yeah.
Because you seem to have, thank you.
Yeah, of course. No, when he moved to Paris and got his studio, like he was pretty young.
So like 1917
I
kind
have
of
to look at
thing.
my notes.
Pre-World War One.
Hold on.
I know. I don't mean to put you on the
No,
spot.
it's okay. I want to make sure I get it right.
When he was in his blue period, he
So
didn't
Michael's
have
wearing,
any money at all.
Alicia, look at, Michael's wearing socks.
After
This
the
is
blue
part of the
period,
blue
they-
period. And the man was like, I actually have Picasso
I've had the
socks.
old guitar socks for years.
This is like the perfect occasion.
So,
And that was in 1904, which is when the house was built.
wow.
I think you
Literally-
really-
Brownies in the house and billboards.
Oh, he might
He-
know.
literally
began international notoriety during the Spanish Civil War is when he really gained international notoriety.
But in my notes, I had 1909 when he upgraded his studio is when he began really working, really making money.
Yeah.
Or making money. Yeah.
Then by
That's when
the-
he became kind of
He was wealthy and famous very early
young.
on.
Yes.
In other words, it wasn't late in life.
A lot
A
of
lot of artists are they're dead. and
That was
everything.
still alive. That
So
actually
that-
made money.
His arrogance and his
He was a character.
immorality.
It's
Okay,
fame-
there's
it's
a-
fame fuel.
I agree with you where there's this line of you can be a genius artist and still be a good person. But why do we have so many genius artists that are such assholes? Like, why is that? Because why do you have to be an artist and be
Wait.
so, well, wait, let me finish. I feel like you have to be an artist, you have to be self-absorbed, you have to be selfish, you have to be arrogant in order to be confident enough to put your stuff out there, like you and I talked about.
narcissism.
Okay,
That was brought
Taylor
up-
Swift.
Wait, everyone.
No.
Everyone. Please again raise your hands in response to the question. But that is a great question. Thank you for posing it, Kelly. I can't see everybody. I'm realizing in the in-person screen. So if I think the Swansons I can't see. So if they are raising their hand, somebody call on them. Yes.
I was making a snarky comment. I'll bite.
Oh, Gus is raising his hand.
I guess what made his art famous was his passion, and whether or not his behavior was considered correct by today's standards or not. His art was produced by his passion. He's obviously very passionate about women. And apparently those women must have been rather passionate about him, getting involved with him, knowing that he had other people that he was involved in. And it was that passion that created that art that made you like the art and the artist before you found out everything bad.
Right.
So that without that passion, you really can't create anything that appeals to anybody. And that picture of the woman, you could tell she was dejected. She felt rejected. It had emotion to it, but you cannot portray that emotion without passion. And he had it. And whether or not when you apply like 2020 morality to early 19th century life, it may not mesh. Everything 50 years from now, we're going to have a whole brand new generation talking about how bad we were and about how awful we were and about how badly we behaved.
Just you guys.
True.
Oh, just me. Just me. I can take it.
No, that's true.
And my name is Gus.
No, that was well said, Gus. That was well said.
Thank you, Gus. I also, oh, Jenna, please.
Just a lot of really good conversation and points and questions brought up. And something that came to mind is that, one of the nice things about art is that it's so multifaceted. Like, I think to myself, you don't really have to like Picasso or like his art to appreciate it. Art can be for the purpose of entertainment or joy, but it can also bring about awareness in the way that this whole conversation is bringing out awareness. And I think to myself, someone could buy a Picasso piece and it might not be because they like Picasso or they like the piece, but they like the story behind it. And so maybe every time they talk about that piece in their home, they're talking about how he treated women and what his, how they inspired his artwork, and just bringing about a totally different conversation. So I guess that is one of the nice things about art, is that it can really fit into whatever context or joy or awareness or whatever you want it to be.
Thank you, Jenna. And Kiki, please.
I think that's a really excellent point, which is that it can be it can be important to, even if you don't like an artist anymore, or even if they do and say horrible things, there can still be a place for what they have created, even if you personally don't engage with that art anymore, because it does still capture, even if it's awful, it does capture a certain mentality. So even maybe not to enjoy it or appreciate it, but just to understand, how certain people can think, and even in that understanding know how to how we ourselves can think differently and how we can be better people by understanding how awful these things are that we should not do.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, Kiki. David, thank you for raising your hand as well.
I just want to mention one of the things that made Picasso really famous was his change in style in the art world. Whereas before, and even in his earlier years, he was really a realistic art painter. He would try to get the 3D effect, but as he got older, what he really tried to do was put everything into two-dimensional. That is, so if you're looking at a person, you're not looking at their three-dimensional person, you're looking at two-dimensional, so you can see their face, their front, their back, their legs, everything on the same sheet of paper. So he tried to put a person's 3-dimension into a 2-dimensional world on paper, on canvas, in this effect. So that's really one of the things that made him and projected him into the stardom that he achieved, was not just his subject matter, but the style in which he painted.
That's a very good point. Sophia, do you want to just talk? They can hear you.
Oh, sure. Can everyone hear me?
Can y'all hear Sophia? Talk.
Hello.
No.
Talk louder.
Hello.
Wow.
Oh God. Okay. Well, I know I've already talked, so I just want to, if anyone else has something to say before I talk again.
Oh,
Okay, I will go ahead. So, something also that I think a lot of this goes back to is who we think that art belongs to, because especially in literature and writing, I think that there's kind of a feeling that once an author has written something and it's been published and reproduced and sent all over the world, does it really belong to the writer anymore, or does it belong to the person that is reading it? Because everyone that consumes art, whether it's writing, painting, whatever, dancing, they interpret it through their own lens, they make it their own, they analyze it in the context of their own lives and their own experiences, which is what unites people around art, because there's something for everyone, because it is through the lens of yourself, which everyone has. So I guess this also just, I'm kind of just posing a question of who do you all think that art belongs to? Because that brings in a whole other element of the morality of art and whether or not morality belongs in art, because it's up to the person to assign that to whatever they're looking at. And everyone interprets things differently. So someone could be looking at one of Picasso's paintings and be thinking something completely different than someone else, you know, regardless of who Picasso was. And I think that's what, I mean, that's why we talk about art. So I guess I'll just throw that out there and hear some responses.
Thank you, Sophia. Also, Chris, stop feeding Coconut, please. She's already fat. John, yes. Please, go ahead.
I just want to point out what I think is obvious. I'm sorry, honey. Which is greatness is the opposite of mediocrity.
I didn't think I was being watched.
greatness is the opposite
of mediocrity. Yeah, I mean, if you want to,
you know how much I love dogs.
You're not going to. If you conform to all the social standards, you're not going to be great. You know, it reminds me, and that's something that's ageless. It doesn't have anything to do with this generation. One of my favorite quotes about people like Napoleon, they say he was a very great bad man because well, they said it because there are a lot of great bad men. You know, you can get into the psychology about power corrupts and all that, but there are very few great artists that aren't maniacal, that aren't, which means totally focused on their art, and everything else is in the background. And you can say that's bad, you can throw rocks at it if you want, but that's human nature.
Are there any great bad women?
Plenty of them. No.
What artist?
I think you're pretty
Pick a female artist
Well,
that was a complete.
No, I think it's a
And,
great.
I'm asking Eric. I mean,
No,
I
no,
don't
no.
know out of ignorance. I'm
No,
asking, are there women?
I greatly
Or
appreciate.
you just said man, very, very specifically.
Yeah, no, I was very specific about
Yeah,
man
yeah.
and
Amy
maniacal,
Winehouse comes to
being
mind.
maniacal. And
Yeah.
it's a trait that men have that's very different than females have.
Yeah, that's
They
an
tend to
interesting,
be
that's
very maniacal
Yeah.
in proportion to the sex. And so that's why.
And the word
there's so-
great is subjective.
Oh, yeah. this
Of
means-
course, I
yeah,
mean, art is
very.
so subjective and.
But when you think of people like Christopher Columbus, which everybody likes to rocks at now, he was maniacal. You think about Karl Marx, he studied in the library while his children starved to death.
Right.
He was so focused on his manifesto, his family died.
You're
while
talking
he was
about
studying.
bad.
If I may,
Yeah.
if I may.
Oh.
Hi,
Okay.
sorry everyone.
Great with a heavily underlined.
Everyone, I asked that we all be quiet for a second. Thank you. I'm seeing a lot of hands. I'm seeing a lot of discussion. These are great points that are being brought up. I'm going to, can you span out the video so I can try to see more people if you don't mind, Mark? But I did see Jackie's hand risen during that before other people spoke. And then I will go to Jenna and then people in this place. So Jackie, go ahead and speak.
Wait, I don't.
Well, okay, fine.
Unmute yourself.
Okay. Hi everyone. You guys are bringing up like great points. I like hearing everything you're saying.
In like a short response to the whole, are there great women? I mean, like serial killers that are women, you know what I mean? Like they're killing boys, arguably not, like, maybe they have a point. But like also they're going against the expectation. Like many women serial killers weren't caught because they were going against the expectation that women were docile or whatever, and they couldn't possibly commit these atrocities. So if that's the case, are they like great bad women because they, accomplished this thing that was thought to be impossible? No, they were just bad people that did things that people didn't think that they would be able to do because of their own limited scope and limited like world traveling and putting themselves in, these other positions of intersectionality. So I don't think that's kind of like, I don't think that can defend an artist. And I think any artist that makes great art is inherently crazy, because there's no way to hit that primal like sense where, or like, like tap into that primal humanity to make another person feel something. Like great art is something that makes you feel something, regardless of what emotion it is. If it invokes it, it's
Right.
good. And there's no way to do that unless you're like a little insane.
Good point, good point.
Thank you, Jenny. I saw Jenna's hand raised, and then Dr. Slayton, and I'm sorry if I'm missing anybody in person, but we'll get to y'all. Jenna, go ahead.
I was just going to respond to Sophia's question that she raised earlier, as far as like who the art belongs to. Like, I think the art always belongs to the artist, and the interpretation is what belongs to the public. And there are artists who want to try and control that interpretation, or if the public is interpreting it incorrectly, they may try to correct that, or they may leave it a mystery, or they simply put it out there for people to interpret. So yeah, I would just say, like, in response to your question, that's my thought, is that the art always belongs to the artist.
Beautiful, thank you. And Dr. Slayton? You're muted, hold on. Dr. Slayton, you're muted. Dr. Slayton. You got there.
My voice has been muted. Now I wanted to go back to also back to what the question that Sophia had posed, and I just wanted to say really parenthetically, just as far as literature is concerned, and I think it would apply to other arts, that just my own study of literature, I'd never have seen any difference in terms of intensity or ambition or drive between female and male authors. And I think they may exhibit it in different ways, but if you look closely at their personal lives, their diaries and such, to get to the point where they're considered great artists, there has to be something, some internal fuel that really drives them, or it just doesn't happen, no matter how talented they are. And then I was going to say something about what's the question Sophia had asked. I almost don't want to, now that Jenna has sort of answered it better than I was going to answer it. So Jenna drew the distinction between the art belonging to the artist and then interpretation belonging to us, which I think is actually a really discerning way of seeing it. And I was only going to say that I think that when an artist decides to make the work available to a greater audience, and particularly strangers, they are ceding some of their art over to the public world. And some people do art and they never show it to anybody. They die without others knowing about it. So there's always a moment where they have to decide whether I want to share this with the rest of the world. And once they do that, they've given up some of it to the rest of the world. And one quick example, Sophia, you being an English major, do you know John Fowles, 20th century novelist? Can you hear me?
No.
Okay. Well, he has the book, The French Lieutenant's Woman. He gets to the very end of the book, and it's about time for the ending, and he suddenly stops and he presents two endings. And he basically says that either ending is correct, or either ending works for him. And he's really thrusting it to the reader and saying which ending is more meaningful to you. And so I think that's just sort of a parable of the relationship between the artist and the work that the artist decides to release to the public.
Thank you, Dr. Slayton. I would also like to ask Megan, and then I will do some hands. I haven't seen hands, so I think one thing that this brought up to me is the idea of like the female versus male distinction with greatness or badness. I don't know. I kind of hate the use of those terminology because good, bad, as Kelly mentioned, is so subjective that it's hard to kind of set that distinction for anybody. But I think it's interesting to think about, like when I think of some of the great, quote, for me, great women artists or poets or whatever that might be, I think of a lot of women who had to use like pen names, who used male pen names, like, I mean, or whose works were published post-mortem. I mean, think about Emily Dickinson. She's a beautiful artist, and a lot of her works was published without her approval. And you think of like the Bronte sisters and all of these women who are artists and I think it's just so complicated with the idea of like femininity and art, especially, I don't know. But one thing that I was thinking of, especially looking at that painting that Alicia used to base her poem off of, it's interesting to me that was painted by a man. And maybe that's just me like overthinking it a bit, but it's interesting to see the way she's like posed and the way she looks. I mean, as a woman, as somebody who has experienced trauma and who knows about a lot of these things, I look at it and I'm like, wow, that is a woman who is depressed or has something going on. But you think about Picasso, and especially knowing his relationships, or what Alicia has told us about these relationships with women. It's interesting because, I mean, I would not expect him to paint something like that does seem so intimate and vulnerable and emotional. And almost subjugation. It does feel subjugated when you look at a woman like that. There is like, it's just, if you think about the difference between the male gaze, the ideal, the typical male gaze and Picasso's gaze, and then like the viewer's gaze and a female's gaze watching that, I would wonder, and I would pose this to some of the men, not in any sort of like bad way, but I just would wonder like how you would perceive that without any other conceptions, any other thoughts brought up by anybody else. Like if you were to see that painting, like, is that what comes to mind, or do you have different ideas?
That's a really good question. It's a great point.
Yeah, Dory, please.
I just want to say that there are a lot of great points made. I want to go back to Sophia's point about the woman. I'm not sure, were you saying a woman serial killer? I'm not sure, did you draw the comparison of a woman serial killer who is now famous, has become famous from becoming a serial killer, to an artist, or did I mishear what was going on? That's all I wanted to ask.
Kinda like it's Jackie, but I don't know, I wasn't really comparing the two, but I was just kind of saying in the scheme of like, or along the same lines of like what makes someone great, like a great bad person. It's just someone that does something so bad that they define expectations. So that's where the whole woman serial killer thing came in to play. But.
Okay, gotcha. I gotta process that, so that's all.
And just to add, I do think it was a lot of it is just in the thought process of the greatness versus badness of humanity, and like what defines a person and like their legacy is kind of what I thought with that. But Wendy, I saw your hand up.
Well, I was thinking we get an emotion from seeing that painting, because you were saying how you were surprised that a man painted that, and then you're saying you don't know that you like him anymore because you know how he treated people, but he obviously maybe understands women. He can bring out an emotion in us that obviously reflects her, so he might be a bad person, but he also might know he's a bad person. He's,
Good point.
he's reflecting
he's
emotion. He understands these women's emotion because he's,
Which
you
makes
know,
him a
portraying
good
them
artist.
in his paintings, so.
No, that's a very good point. Oh, should I raise my hand?
Yeah, go ahead, Alicia.
So
Go ahead.
Me?
Go ahead, Alicia. Go ahead.
That's a good, very good point. And frankly, from this discussion, I'm learning and growing and shining more. So, I mean, you're right. You're absolutely right. I think
Your
one,
future's so bright, I gotta wear shades.
Right, it's in the
I
grade.
think for me though, one thing that has really resonated tonight, the one point that everyone's brought, or several people have brought up, and I want to take it beyond artists, the idea of morality in our society. Like, how much do we,
Yeah, that
I mean,
takes
I'm not
some-
just talking about artists, like we're talking about, you know, let's be real. I mean, how much does morality play a point? Play a part, sorry, I put a little champagne. You know what I'm trying to say, morality.
Well, there's a difference between people that are famous in the public eye
Exactly.
and people that are private. And you know,
Famous
somebody brought up Will Smith and all of that. And
Yep.
it's funny because I didn't consider Will Smith an artist, so that on me. I love him, but for me, he's like, I know that's, I know that I said that on me. I got it.
I keep thinking of Roman Polanski.
You know, like, or Picasso, like, these are artists.
yeah,
So
so the
Will
bottom-
Smith is the guy that is able to get on a camera and
Yeah.
look good and do something awesome. And I'm not putting him down, but
No, yeah.
I do think that when reality stars do something bad, it makes the news and everybody stops to listen. But then why are we listening? Why are we watching? Why are we caring? Like, you know, and we're talking about somebody that changed art, oil painting specifically, changed how, one of the things that I love about Picasso, his earliest self-portrait is almost a Renaissance painting. I mean, it's just gorgeous. The last portrait he painted of himself was somebody with like severe Alzheimer's. Do you know what I mean? You've seen, and you can go through his life and his decades and see all of the ways that he's changed. And it became, I mean, again, subjective, my opinion. His last picture is insanity. I mean, it's just this, and he didn't like himself in these portraits. I find that really fascinating how he changed as an oil painter.
Yeah.
And as an artist, as artists change and grow, I think morality, I think that they should be held to the same standards that the rest of us are. And because this is stupid, but everybody's sort of an artist, no matter what we're doing. I know what I mean.
Yes. Yes. That was beautifully said, Kelly. Thank you so much. Yeah, like round of applause. Are there any other hands? I can't see.
We've all gonna be the same.
Yeah,
Some people
nobody
that
gets
are-
to feel anything.
These two gentlemen are disagreeing. I don't know if you can hear them.
No,
but
I'm agreeing with Chris.
they're disagreeing with what I'm saying, but they're saying something very specific, which I think
Please,
is.
we
if
would
you
love to
guys
hear
have
it.
speak up.
Please do speak
Yeah,
up. Chris.
I think an art form is supposed to be thought-provoking and different, and, you know, if we all just do what the status quo wants us to do, then it becomes photography.
But the
No,
question.
I don't mean
Don't
that.
put down photography. But the question was, do we hold these people in the same moral standard? Because they're artists, do they get away
Well,
with
you get to choose.
abusing women or
Well, you
being
get
terrible?
No, if they abuse someone, they should be punished.
But because they're artists, we say, oh, that's okay, he's an artist, so he can.
But
be
that's your
shitty.
choice. You can choose to enjoy Picasso's painting.
I'm
is
with
not.
you. I can enjoy art and I don't care about the person.
But if he hurts
Because-
you,
well,
then he needs to be.
But the artist has manifested something that's for everybody to enjoy, and it's not,
Some
I
artists-
think it should be a break.
Yeah,
You know,
some
I think it
artists
should
do that.
do.
Some artists do that.
But
But other artists choose to make people think.
But
Oh, you got hurt, Gary.
Juliet's raising her hand.
No,
Your dad
Gary,
wants to
go
say
ahead.
something.
Gary, I would you haven't said anything. Please go ahead.
But the interesting point from what Alicia's experience in this was, she loved Picasso, loved his stuff. We were in Malaga and went to his museum and saw all these interesting paintings for people who take interest in that. But the minute she does the research and discovers how poorly he treated his women, her impression of the art changes.
Yeah.
So take it to, and this is not a political statement, but if people had, if it had been publicized throughout the years of his artwork, how he treated the women who he painted, would people have had such a high opinion of his artwork, and would he have been as commercially successful?
Would he have
It's
been?
like disinformation in today's, internet world.
Yeah.
Somebody withheld the information about how bad a character he was. Back then, it wasn't on the internet or any of that, it was on whatever. But would that have changed your perception? Example, I go walk on the beach, I watch the sunrise, it's beautiful and it's red, and I think about it. But if somebody tells me that red is because there's some ship out there spewing pollution and that's what makes it red, it might change my view of how that sunrise is.
That's a good point.
Just a thought.
It's not.
Great thought. Excellent point.
Thank you,
Excellent.
Father Gary figure. I would like to add something, and then I see Anne's hand up, and I want to get to you. Actually, Anne, you go first. I got to get my thoughts together.
Okay, well, I was just gonna carry on from what Gary was just saying. So in the Picasso Museum in Malaga, one of the things that I think was really interesting is that we had a guided tour, and I thought our tour guide was incredibly well versed on Picasso, and the things that she was sharing gave me new insight into how to look at his artwork. And yet none of this part of his life was part of her story to us. She talked very factually about his wife and his wives and things like that. But it's interesting. So was that a conscious decision on her part to delete aspects of Picasso's life that we might find to be reprehensible, or whatever word you want to use? Or was it, why? And so I just think it's really interesting because, Alicia, that I think, as I remember you writing the poem on the trip, you started the poem after our tour in Malaga. And so I just wonder how your poem would have changed even. That's all.
Thank you, Anne. Alicia, if you want to say something, you can. I have a lot to say, but I also don't take over. I'm going to say a few things. Sorry?
We're surprised you have a lot to say.
I know, it's shocking. So if anyone needs to cut me off, please do. But I think these are very interesting conversations, especially like coming from an anthropology background where I'm studying a lot of this stuff. And these are things that we talk about and things I think about a lot in museums, especially. I think to talk to Anne's point, one thing I learned about, especially with my conversations around Pompeii and the things we learn, tour guides typically are very wrong. I will just say that. They are typically, what tour guides are meant to do, their whole role is not to be factual with information, and some are, but typically they're not as willing to share the hard truth. It's more about the truth that will sell and get them tips. So it's not that they're necessarily lying, it's that they're choosing the narrative they want to portray, and they're choosing the narrative they want to share that will indeed get them money. Mom, I'll get to you. Give me a second. I'm sorry. But I do think especially I think for me, I kind of disagree with some of the other points that were said, and that I think it's super important to think about the artist and not just separate yourself from the art from the artist, because I feel like the legacy an artist has is very tied, of course, to the art and the art capability, but it's also important to recognize the faults of the person themselves. Because you can create beautiful things, but like were saying, you can be a really bad person, and that does not make it right for your art to prevail through like centuries and through like eternity potentially, without people being aware that you're shitty. And I mean, the fact that like, I mean, especially like mother or father or any of these people who have, and like Anna and David, who have been to these museums and who have experienced Picasso's art in like more formal settings, and yet none of us had any awareness of these really controversial and bad aspects of him as a person. And that's just kind of telling how willing we are in society to be like, oh, an artist has like they are the exception. If they're making beautiful art, they don't have to necessarily be like good people. And I feel like that is something that, especially in like the 21st century, and especially in the modern day, we're kind of starting to get past, and we're starting to think, is that right? Is it okay to be glorifying somebody who's creating things that are maybe beautiful, but also portraying people in a negative light, or who are physically possibly harming people? I mean, leading people to their suicides, things like that. So yeah, that's just things that I think about. Mom, you go ahead. Alicia.
Oh, I was actually just gonna say you should explain your museum experience and the fact that you're the editor of the Berkeley Review.
I guess the museum experience, I worked in a museum for a month and then 2 months and then quit. But I also just, I study anthropology, so I study a lot about the proper ways of providing context in museum spaces. And it's something that I think about a lot when entering museums. I love museums. And part of what I think is really vital to a positive or holistic experience in a museum or within any sort of gallery is having the context for the time period and the artist and what the artist was going through at the time of like creation. Because like when I think about Picasso, I think about the blue period, and I'm like, oh, he was depressed. That's what's so like beautiful about it. He's creating so many beautiful pieces while he's experiencing a like strong mental disorder that is really hurtful. But then when, mom talks about it and you think about the fact that, okay, so he was depressed, but partially because he slept with the woman that his best friend was in love with, then you're like, wait a second, hold on. I don't know. I just think culture, like context, is the most important thing in every situation you're in. But I would love to hear from other people. I'm tired of talking. Stephanie, please.
I do take issue with us referring to people as good people and bad people. I also think about Hemingway and all of his relationships and just how he treated people, and I also keep thinking about Diego and Frida, Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo.
He was horrible. Sorry.
He was, and Frida knew, so horrible. But Frida did know that going in. But I think she thought that she could change him, and I think she naively thought that. But Frida also had many lovers, male and female, and Trotsky and Georgia O'Keeffe.
I didn't say there was anything wrong with that.
Georgia O'Keeffe, but they were bad. I say there isn't a woman.
The truth comes out now.
That's bad traits.
So.
Right. Well, I'm not sure what you just said, because I didn't hear it all, because I thought too much. But I just wanted to interject that, so then we can go on to that conversation from there.
Thank you. I saw Dory and Francesca raise their hands. Which one of yeah, Frankie, you go ahead. I saw you.
I just had a quick comment just to say I agree with what Juliet said, that it's really important to know the history of the time of that piece when it was created and what the artist was going through. I think that's really helpful to help you appreciate the art more. And then I also agree that saying a person is good or bad, because none of us are perfect. We all have our bad. And we all do our good things. We all make mistakes. And there are just some of us who are just much worse. And I think those are, and that's it.
Spectrum.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Excellent
Corey, did
point.
you want to say something?
You know, it's the more you listen to the discussion, the more questions you have. And I think Stephanie brought up a lot of very good points from an artistic standpoint. At what point in time, if you start, boxing everybody into the normal social accepted behavior, at what point do you lose the creativity or the ability to create art? Because art is most of the time something that comes from going out of the social norms and social acceptable behaviors. So again, it's another question. I don't have the answer to that.
Frankie?
Too bad that's tomorrow.
Because there's more than one answer, that's why.
It makes you think of the word counterculture.
Well, I mean,
Great one.
the thing to understand is that there is no normal. What's normal?
Agreed.
It may be normal to you, normal to somebody else. So, I mean, there's no normal.
Yeah.
We are who we are. And I come from a science background. So a lot of people will say being called a nerd is an insult. I consider it a compliment.
We're all nerds.
We're all nerds.
You're in good company.
He's got the badge.
Musicians, I got my degree in physics and, it's all.
I'm a
the
proud
same.
redneck.
We're all nerds.
Yeah, so you or nerds are, you specialize in something and people think that's weird. And
Yeah.
who cares?
Definitely. Thank you. Alicia, did I see your hand raised? Or Chris, did you want to say something? You both go.
No, I love everyone. Everyone's acceptable. Everybody's got their own life to lead and live. Everybody's. As long as they don't come at me with a running chainsaw.
Dang, Chris, I was going to do that next time I saw you.
Well, I would have to think about that.
I was just gonna ask.
Mike's up.
Oh,
Mike.
Yeah, sorry, just real quick, on what Stephanie was saying, I totally agree with what she said, and good people do bad things, and a lot of times it's because of mental problems, or you talk about Picasso as a narcissist. To have that many lovers, there's probably something going on there,
Well, brothel.
It's so, yeah. It's so, people have their own
That
demons.
might have damaged him at that age.
I mean, right?
Yeah.
I think it may set the tone.
But
I don't think so.
I'm not trying to put a finger on why. I'm just saying
Yeah, right.
people have their demons.
Yes.
And so,
But our
And
demons,
it's-
does that make you a great artist?
well,
Well, we
I'm
don't
just
always know what
I'm
hurts
just
someone else
focusing on
either.
what Stephanie said about judging people as being good or bad.
Yeah.
Because good people can have bad behavior. And sometimes it's just the nature of what they're dealing with. And this guy sounds like, and I've never read anything other than like a Wikipedia article about Picasso, so I don't really know. But it makes you wonder, like what was he dealing with, and not excusing abusing women, of course, but
There's
just,
mommy issues.
yeah, but who knows what the issues were, but yeah, we could possibly be judging people good and bad, and I think that's what I picked up on what you said. That's an area where it's a slippery slope, right? And so we're talking about how art comes from people who are struggling,
Yeah.
and we need to look at the art and understand what it means and appreciate it or not, or put the cup on the shelf.
And it can mean more than one thing.
And that's okay.
That's okay.
Thank you.
I was just wondering if there's anything written from his perspective. I mean,
Well, I
I read about him, but everything voicing how he was feeling. Does he feel bad that he did things?
He pretty much showed what he wanted to do.
Did he have a diary where he spoke about
yeah.
remorse?
Was he tortured? Was he,
I don't.
was the blue period like, oh, was it self-centered? Was it all about his
I think
love, or
artists
did he
have to be
literally
self-centered,
feel?
but he probably did feel something in order to go into a blue and black period
But
after
did he
his
make that
friend
about
killed
himself, or
himself
was he
because of something he did.
releasing
In other
something?
words, he felt it.
Yeah.
And he brought it out in this beautiful artwork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think his diary is in his art.
Yeah.
But I would like to know, Alicia, you read about the blue period and then you read about the rose period. And I mean, is there more that you could share with us about that? What is the rose period? And
I would love to
another
see a
period.
picture.
He
I
liked
would love to
redheads.
see a picture of the rose period.
Yeah.
Maybe Juliet could pull
He did
up
a
a picture
portrait
of the
of
rose
He did a
period.
portrait of a woman that was considered his first.
If you're gonna view it as a woman.
What was the period when everything's just simple line drawing?
Oh, look at
So
the
it's
rose,
very
this is
obvious.
the rose period. Oh, beautiful. Okay.
So,
bastard.
and where was he then? And what year was that? And who was he? Was he? what
Thank
was-
you,
Who
Julia.
was he with? I wonder.
Wikipedia.
Okay, the beginning,
Wow.
the beginning of the rose period, started with his affair with Bernardine Olivier,
That's her.
whom he met in Paris.
Wow.
She's an artist model and the one with the red hair, beautiful eyes. So basically it ended his blue period when he was sad about his friend. Basically, it just means that he got out of his depression about his friend and he started painting beautiful paintings over.
He went back to colors and not monochromatic.
Yes, Juliet.
Exactly.
I have a question.
Exactly.
Me and Sophia have a question to pose to everyone. Do you think Picasso's art is good because it's good art, or do you think it just is because it's Picasso? I mean, if you see one of his paintings, is that something you would go, wow, that's magnificent, that is a masterpiece? Or do you see the painting, see Picasso's name attached and go, wow, it's a Picasso, that's incredible? Oh, I saw
Everybody, you know.
I
don't
see
hear from
incredible.
everybody briefly, so maybe we could all
I see
try to
incredible. I see genius. I see incredible. I knew nothing about him. I
So why is
still,
my artwork
I don't
worse
even
than
care.
his? Well, I don't-
No, his composition, the lines, the way he does the shapes, obviously his use of color. No, he's always been my favorite, always.
When they brought out the rose period, there was like a picture they showed you and I both at the same time, like, wow.
I mean, it's genius. And by the way, tonight has made me know more about this particular person, good or bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
He wasn't capable of doing anything else.
He's incredible.
He's a hack.
Juliet, do you want us all to just run through and answer that question?
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
Stephanie, I saw your hand up and then I saw Anne. So Stephanie, why don't you go?
I think that Picasso is so vast, from his stick doves to this kind of other images that Picasso is, his cubism, but just even running through that quick little rose period slideshow brought a lot of gas in the room. And yes, we knew it was Picasso, but I don't think we were responding from that place, but rather just the absolute exquisiteness of what we were seeing on the screen. So my answer would be, no, I don't look at a piece and like it because it's signed Picasso. I think it's something he brings out other that I would say, wow, and then go, oh, it's a Picasso.
And then Anne, go ahead.
Well, I am probably, I don't know, I might defy what some other people are thinking. Well, I will, but I actually don't really like Picasso. I think his work is incredible. So his way of, as David was talking earlier, making a 3D thing come to 2D and having you be able to see everything on the screen, on the palette canvas. You know, I think it's masterful, but I don't enjoy it.
That's interesting. I actually did create a poll for the Zoom group, and I'd love to see maybe just hands raised of the people in person. So I'm going to launch it for the Zoom folks, but it's just the same question. And I guess in person, if you raise your hand, that means it's beautiful art. And if you keep your hand down, that would mean it's beautiful art because it's Picasso. And I want to just qualify that. Of course, I mean, I think everyone can recognize that the art is good. I just mean from the standard that we put it in the modern society as this like highly elevated. I mean, you know, we think of Picasso and we think of one of the best artists of all time, potentially. Is that because of the name attached to it at this point? Or, you know, is it because the art itself deserves to be that way? So if in person, if you think it's because of the art itself, maybe raise your hand.
And another point to that, Juliet, is does it move you? You see a picture, you don't necessarily know it's Picasso and you don't really care. It just, I mean, a couple of us just went, because it just hit us as this beautiful thing that somebody created. And if we didn't know it was Picasso, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is the question about Picasso or is it about art that affects?
Both. It's
both.
You're going to raise your hand if you think it's just beautiful art, or if you think it's beautiful art because it's somebody that is so historically significant.
I have an opinion about other artists that I prefer. You know what I'm saying? Is it about art or is it specifically about Picasso, the image that you're going to
Do you like the art because of the art or because of the name on it?
Yeah. I'm sure I'm gonna like some and not like others.
Well, he was very different between the beginning and the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he went through a
The
lot.
Cubism thing.
Yes, very
respectful.
different.
So let's raise our hands.
It's just beautiful.
It looks like the
You're gonna show
majority of people think that it's beautiful because of the art itself. So I think that kind of tells a lot. Frankie, please go ahead.
So I'm going to throw something new into the mix. In the age of NFTs, Picasso is now loved because he's expensive. He's valuable. So
Yeah.
it's more valuable. So that kind of complicates things because now it's more a matter of currency and a lot of art is used as currency.
Definitely. I think that's a really awesome point to bring up, especially in this conversation. And I think that's something that a lot of modern, I mean, even myself, when looking through a museum, I see a bunch of beautiful art and then you see a Monet or you see a Degas and you're like, oh my God, it's Degas, it's Monet, it's Picasso. And it's funny, I was actually in Tahoe recently and there was a little random shop that and the doorway was like, we sell Picassos. So naturally I went inside and I was like, okay. And I looked at this, one of the Picassos they were selling, and it was this like scrap piece that he created, like obviously made like, you know, when he was preparing for a piece. And I looked at it and I kind of laughed and I was like, I could draw that, you know, and you think about it and that thing's being sold for like thousands of dollars in this crazy expensive art facility. And you think about the fact that like having a name attached to these pieces that look like a kindergartner could have drawn them makes them so much more elevated, and people put them in their homes and they're like a huge deal. Yes, Kelly, please.
I just had to laugh because I have the same story. We walked we were in Palm Beach for random reason, walked into this gallery on Worth Avenue, and from across the room, it was a pencil drawing from across the room, and I went, oh my God, what is that? And Michael and I are, you know, walking in, and I'm like, let's buy that. Let's just buy that. And I have no idea. We walk closer. It's Picasso. And Michael's like, it's fucking $16,000. And it was like a scribble. But for some reason, across the room in this beautiful art gallery, it hit me. Just, that's what I wanted.
Yeah, there's a reason.
But was it marketed that way?
No, because I'm surrounded by all these other things. It just spoke to me, whatever this, and I'm like, oh shit, that's a fucking Picasso. Sorry for swearing.
You don't have to apologize for swearing. Alicia.
Hey, so I'm just trying to figure out, is there a way, Mark, that we can continue where you can leave? Because you're a man of hire and it's been 2 hours and
Oh, it's been 2 hours.
I
It's been
just don't want you
fabulous.
to feel like you have to stay. And I know you're in charge of the technology.
No. Hey, carry on.
Are you sure?
Yeah, carry on.
Are you positive?
Yeah, because we didn't know going in how things were going to flow.
I mean, I figured 2 hours. There's a lot of introduction.
Yeah, thank you. It's our initial,
I mean, do you
it's
want
our
to
initial
agree?
get together.
Thank you, by the way, to Mark
Oh,
for doing the technology. The moderating.
Yay.
You're amazing at it. And Kelly for doing the art.
Yay.
Anyway, that's all. And next, if I can just, before we continue, I think Juliet, you're gonna do possibly Pompeii next month?
Well, me and Sophia were considering doing something together, but we can discuss you, me, and her and figure out what makes the most sense. Because the thing about Pompeii is I was hoping to maybe wait until I'm done, because I was thinking about presenting on my thesis, which is not done. So maybe in the spring I could do one in like May or April and tell about Pompeian magic, which is going to be super exciting. So
That would be awesome. And by the way, we have a lot of topics from people already that are interested in presenting. So if anyone has a topic in a month that they want, please let Juliet know. We can sign this up.
6-4 weeks on this.
Are we gonna move houses or are we gonna stay here? What do you guys think?
I think everybody should decide what they want to do. By the way, it's Robbie Burns' birthday. What's that called? Robbie Burns' Day?
Also, I would like
Robert.
to add that I just dropped in the chat on Zoom, but there is a tiny URL that has access to the drive. So it's tinyurl.com/shine on salon. And that gives you access to the drive. You can then add, there's a schedule in there and you can add your name to a schedule. You can, whatever, you can add people to the roster if you'd like us to email, if you'd like to include other people in it. So please do that if you are interested. You can also just email me if you're technologically challenged.
We all are.
Now you're drinking some orange. You were drinking blue or green before.
I switched to just a mimosa. I'm sorry.
So Juliet, are you gonna do the toga theme or not?
If I do Pompeii and magic, yes, we will all be requested to wear togas to the event.
When you coming home?
So I have a question.
When will I
Can we
see you
invite-
again?
We can invite other people. So
Yeah,
my
just-
daughter wanted to be here with her
Yeah,
husband.
Yes.
And my niece is in Atlanta. She's an archaeologist.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
she needs to.
Oh my
come
God,
to
Kelly,
your-
please send her information my
I'll
way.
tell you more later. I'll tell you more later. She just got back. She just studied in Oxford and was in Egypt last summer digging. She needs to be on your. She needs to be
I
on
would
your
love
talk.
to meet her. Please, my dream is to dig in Egypt. Please connect her with me.
You're coming here for Christmas, right?
I'll be back in a week. I'll be back in a week and a day.
Okay. So we need to get y'all together.
And whoever's turn it is to speak, whatever topic you guys decide, you can pick whatever you want everyone to wear.
I don't know. I thought elegant blue was perfect.
What else? Am I gonna wear these socks?
Toga for her, right? You know, whatever
You need to
want.
go to the camera and zoom in on your socks.
Is this a sign that we're wrapping up?
Hold my foot that high, fall over.
I have one more question. Okay. So overall, do you guys think morality matters then?
Wait, rephrase your question, if I may. Please rephrase.
Yeah, of course.
I would hope everyone agrees that morality matters. Do you mean in the respect of art?
Yes.
So you're asking, if I may, you're asking, does morality matter when viewing or interpreting art?
Correct.
Correct.
Thank you, daughter.
Wanted to make sure. Sophia has a response.
I mean, maybe not obviously, but I think obviously morality matters when viewing and consuming art, because morality matters to me. So if, you know, that's something that you think about in your daily life, which I think most people do, it is something that comes to mind when you're consuming and viewing art. Doesn't mean that it matters if the artist was moral. I mean, that's kind of what we've been talking about, but short answer, yes, it does matter, because that goes into the context, which to me is one of the most important parts of consuming literature, art, anything. Because yeah, it does matter. Yeah, I'll just end with that.
I'm gonna go on.
Thank you, Sophia. I see you two, if you guys want to decide.
Can I go on a limb and say that's a slippery slope?
Yeah.
Because in 1950, 55 maybe, Elvis Presley hit the stands and the television, and the parents of the day said he was immoral, he was shaking his hips.
True.
And if they were in charge, we never would have had Elvis Presley. So I think it's just a slippery slope. What you call morality is a slippery slope.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I'm just not that.
Yeah.
Kelly, did you want to say something?
I was kind of gonna agree with him,
You can go.
is that we look at art through our own eyes, and if we start looking, well, as Chris and Stephanie have both said, if we start looking at art with the artist and their character in mind, it changes. And so should we just go ahead and appreciate the art and condemn the person? And maybe that's okay.
Or let it go.
That's what I mean, is condemn the person. They're a shitty person. Picasso is a shitty person, but his art is incredible, and it changed a lot of ways. It changed other artists that were able to now navigate a world. Back then, when people were doing this, I mean, he was crazy what he was doing.
Yeah.
And people thought he was insane. But then how much beautiful art came from that, from good people. So maybe we just need to concentrate on the ripples, but condemn the guy. And by the way, I still maintain I can't name an artist, female artist, and I'm not talking about a singer or a movie star, pop artist or movie star, because that's a different thing. But I can't think of an oil painter or a sculptor woman who was that terrible. You know what I mean?
How do you define terrible?
Well, and so you're
go.
right. And so terrible is subjective. I'm sorry, you're right. But I think that we can look at the art and condemn the person.
But appreciate it.
And appreciate the art.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I saw a bunch of hands, including my own, but I think, okay, I'm sorry, Dory, you were not the first hand I saw. I saw Francesca, then Sophia, then Dory, then Dr. Slayton, and then myself. So Francesca, go ahead.
Okay, so I like to think that much like art is up to the individual to appreciate, judging the moral value of the artist is up to the individual to decide. Unless they're convicted criminal, I think we just kind of have to figure it out on our own.
That's smart. That's smart.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, sorry. It seems as though much of the recent conversation was prompted by my response. I would just like to say that each and every single one of you used morality in your judgment, in your answer that you just gave. And I think that was my point, that it is up to the individual, and everyone, based off of their own experiences, their own understanding morality. Like with Elvis, the younger generation thought that what he was doing was great because he was defying expectations, because he was making progress, and that to them was morally good. And to the older generation, that was morally bad because they saw that as negative for whatever reason, because of their own life experiences. So I would just like to say that, you know, everyone is using morality, their own understanding of morality, to answer that question.
Good, smart, smart.
Thank you, Sophia. Dr. Slayton, or Dory, I forgot.
Dory was next.
Dory, sorry.
Yeah, just a short point. I think Jackie nailed it on the head. And the easiest way to really maybe define this thing is between morality, the flexibility, if you will, of morality versus legality. So when Jackie was talking about, the serial killer, we're talking about somebody who's doing something illegal and becoming, you can say Hitler was great. Everybody knows Hitler, but, we're talking about something that was completely illegal, completely unacceptable, in any humane form. When you're talking about morality, the women that were around Picasso were also willing participants in a way, except for, I believe, one that I read about that he actually locked up in his house, because he didn't want her to leave. I think there was one. But and the same thing with Elvis, the people in the crowd were participating in his immorality. So I think a very easy way to define is like, okay, morality might be flexible. And Sophia also said that, it's an individual thing, but legality is a whole other issue. And just a quick last point is, from what I hear, there are actually videos in the dark web where people are videoing murdering somebody on camera. So now, again, is that art? And with that, I'm going to pass on to Bill.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. Thank you for bringing that up, Dr. Slayton.
Yeah, I agree with whoever said that it's a slippery slope when you start discussing morality or applying morality to art. But if I'm understanding Sophia correctly, I agree with her premise, and Sophia, tell me if I'm saying this right, but which is that it's not that you look to impose any kind of moral code, particularly your own moral code, on an artist and then judge their art in relation to that. But I think what she's saying is that art is meant to open up our understanding of the world in a far more intense and complex way than it ever did before. And if it does that, you can't remove morality, which is such an important arena in human life, and say, but that's the one area that art can't open us up to, that we have to keep that out of art or our discussion or our response to art. So if I understand it correctly, she's saying that morality just is intrinsically something that art must deal with, and we need to have moral responses, which is not the same thing as saying moral judgments. But we can't respond to art and say that our moral responses are irrelevant to the art itself. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think you. Oh God, sorry. But yeah, I think you summed that up better than I even understood my own point. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was. I would like to say a few things as well. Sorry, Sappho's got the zoomies right now. My cat. I think it's the idea of morality in art is a very interesting idea to begin with. I guess I think there is. I feel like bringing up morality as a whole becomes such a convoluted endeavor in the sense that as individuals, morality is so subjective, and morality is something that there are of course in each country and each group. I mean, whether you're on Sullivan's Island versus in California, morality is going to differ, and whether it's religion or society or culture, whatever you want to call it, the idea of what morals are is very different person to person, society to society. But I kind of stay by my original idea, even with all of this conversation. I feel like the thing with art is you can appreciate art as within. I think art in and of itself, when you look at a singular piece of painting, if you're thinking about visual arts, it is a subjective experience. It's an experience that's your own emotions. It's you're putting your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own ideas onto the painting, and then you're returning it, So you look at something and you're like, oh, this reminds me of when I was a kid and I ran through the woods or whatever. But then once you experience that, I think if it's something you really like, if it's something you're really interested in I don't know, talking about, I think that's when, as an individual, we need to say, okay, I need to look beyond just my feelings of the paintings and think about what the context of why this painting was created, who created this painting, who was this person. And it's almost, I mean, I find it exhausting. It's exhausting as the modern viewer of anything, because we do have this sort of pressure on our own selves to be aware of the reality of the things that we're experiencing. Because I mean, as we've mentioned, men, especially in the past, have been just traditionally really shitty. And men, I mean, women too, but especially men. I mean, we live, the patriarchal society has been the predominating societal political mode for a long time. And it's like, you can't really escape it, you know, when you're looking at art, when you're looking at things. Sorry, I'm gonna shut up. I'm sorry. Kelly, go ahead.
So I have a question. Art is subjective, but is morality really subjective? Oh,
I would answer yes, but that's also just me.
okay. So let me go a little bit more then.
I
My
agree,
thought
morality is subjective.
But why, I'm asking, why is it subjective? Don't we as humans, male or female, this century or last century, have a line that crosses over what is immoral and what is not? And again, we can all just say, okay, Picasso slept with a bunch of chicks. Okay, whatever, get over it. You know, but did he kill somebody? Like, did he, you know, what's our line on morality? What's the definition of morality as humans? And is the definition in this generation different from 100, you know, 50 years ago? Isn't morality, and I'm not going religion, so don't even give that to me. I'm thinking about just people. So isn't morality, don't we all sort of have the same line?
No.
Yeah. I'm gonna let Sophia respond.
Oh, and by the way, I'm not from the South, and you're right. The Baptist South would be a different. You're right. Okay, never mind.
No, I think your thought is a very important thought. I have a few things to say and then I'll let Sophia respond. I do have to leave soon. But Sophia, I saw John's hand. I also would like to respond. I saw Frankie's hand. Sophia, go ahead. Join us. Talk. Oh my God, sorry.
Okay. I would just like to say that I think the fact that you're asking that question means that morality is subjective, because if it weren't, it would be self-evident. And I think the fact that it's not means that people have different experiences of morality. I think that a large majority of people can agree on certain things, but there are so many nuances that I just don't know. And again, I think we're using the term morality pretty loosely from its original, or whatever, the way that philosophers and scholars use it. We're kind of talking about what makes a good person, I think, when we're talking about morality right now. But yeah, I guess I'll just say that I think that because you're asking that question, isn't morality universal? That means that it's not.
Okay.
Thank you, Sophia. And John, I saw your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we've come back to this idea of the slippery slope, because morality in the Western tradition is individual, but throwing rocks and making judgments on other people's morality is a slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I find amazing about the current culture, is it's no longer about deciding for yourself what your own morality is. For some strange reason, we have a culture that's, talk about Baptist, we now have a culture that's deciding, making judgments on everybody else's morality, which I find really bizarre. That's all.
Thank you, John. I also would like to respond. I think the reason why I say morality is subjective, I do agree it does have a lot to do with the modern society and political climate. I think a lot of what morality has been tied to in the past has always been religiously motivated or politically motivated. And I think you can, kind of like Sophia was talking about, you can define morality in a lot of different regards. There's morality on like the governmental level, because I mean laws do in turn inform morals, and I think that's what a lot of religion and politics are. If you think about it, a lot of it is trying to impose a system-wide morality upon a populace. But if you think about like my morality differs from my parents' morality, which differs from Sophia's morality, which differs from anybody here's morality. And yes, I mean, there are of course like similar, especially since we are all like American, we all have very similar like moral ideals, like don't kill somebody, you know, that's not great. Like don't do that. Don't go murder someone in broad daylight. Like we're not in like Hammurabi's code era where you eye for an eye type of thing. But I mean, even like in the sense that for me, like talking about pronouns is important, but maybe for somebody else, it's not. That's a morality situation. So I honestly feel like it is just, it's very individual, but it is again formed by the society. So like, yes, there are like societal morals, but then that is going to in turn inform the individual on what their moral code is going to be. And that's kind of what creates a society, which is what's really beautiful in a way. It's really beautiful if you think about it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you. I know. I do have to go, unfortunately, very like 6 minutes ago. I don't want to cut everybody off. Alicia, why don't you finish us off, and then I will say, we can say our goodbyes.
Well, I was just gonna say, as far as morality, that was certainly not my purpose tonight. It was more about, I mean, frankly, like I had no idea that I was gonna be spot on with Foam in terms of his life. And I'm not trying to be judgmental, like I was just shocked, frankly. I mean, you know, I was just shocked, and I know it's a slippery slope, and I guess I'm probably still going to appreciate his art. You know what I mean? Like I still appreciate, I mean, he is one of the fathers of modernism, like, you know, and his art is amazing. So it does bring us in this discussion of, you know, what's important and what's not important. And it is all subjective. But ultimately, I thought it was a fascinating discussion, way more than I ever dreamed it would be. So I'm just thrilled you guys were here, and thank you guys for all coming, and yay, I can't wait for the next month. It's going to be amazing.
Thank you so much, Alicia. And also I can see Luna has been involved in the conversation clearly, or is that Cleo? I don't know.
Luna, she's so happy.
She's loving the philosophical debate. Yes, I think the beauty of this group and the idea of this whole thing is to have, starting with Picasso and ending with a discussion on morality. That's what's beautiful about it. And I can assure you, me and Sophia next month will have something crazy prepared that will create some intellectual discourse that will probably leave people either angry or questioning their own life choices. That's the goal of this.
Sexuality.
Or questioning sexuality. Ooh, maybe that's what we want. Dr. Slade, do you want to invest on something? I see the finger, the professorial finger. Excuse me. In your opinion, go ahead.
Before I lose the chance, I just want to thank everybody who put this together, and then particularly, you know, this is Alicia's brainchild, and if you just look at all the different sorts of people that she brought into this, and how she spearheaded a very long and I think pretty sophisticated and yet mannerly discussion. That's exactly what those old-fashioned salons were supposed to do. And so she's really bringing back an old institution that people have sort of forgotten about. And I just think she deserves a tremendous amount of credit for envisioning this and carrying it through.
Yay! Woo! Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
Yes, agreed. All right. That is all. And end scene, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. This was really great.
Hey, Jetta, before you go, Juliet.
Yes.
Was there anyone online that we didn't see? Did Hermit make it from India?
No, unfortunately, everyone I think everyone said something that was here, except for maybe Jennifer, Allie's friend. And Katrina.
What about, yeah. Okay, Katrina. All right, cool. Thanks, honey. Thank you for being moderator.
Not to upset anyone's morale. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays. It was amazing.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, guys.
Care.
Thanks for the guitar, Dory.
You did it. Oh my God.
I know. That was exactly.